microphone, Steve?
I've had several people ask about my haircut this year. You know how companies are diversifying, they're getting into a lot of other industries. Let's just say that Roto-Rooter and hairstyling did not go well together. Fred and Ellen Berney have been presenters at the association's conventions for several years now, and their background and expertise covers the same things that a lot of our expertise is in this room covered, but theirs are probably longer. 24 years you've been in business?
42 years.
42 years. Instead, you know.
Just right.
42 years. So please take advantage of that knowledge, but don't take advantage of Fred and Ellen.
Thank you, Steve. Video without sound is like going back to the old-time movies, and if you noticed, you can actually take a television picture or take a video. You can lose the picture, and with the sound you can probably still understand what's happening. But if you turn that sound off and you're just looking at picture, very difficult to understand what's going on. That's why sound can be, well, as Dwayne I think pointed out this morning, with the tripod, with the 3 legs, they're all important. So one is just as important as the other. But with sound, we found out that a lot of video people really never understood sound. And part of that is I don't think it's taught anywhere. I know when I went to school, it wasn't even taught. Well, of course, that was quite a way ago. So a lot of things weren't taught back then. But what I want to do this morning is try to, or this afternoon, is try to compact a lot of information into an hour. We're going to divide this into 2 parts. We're going to talk about sound recording, and then we're going to talk about conference recording. But let's start off with sound. There are several types of microphones. If you look at the outline, I'm going to try to follow that. So let's look at the first one where we talk about types of microphones. There we're going to talk about the fact that you have cardioid mics, there are condenser microphones, there are ribbon microphones. You don't see too many of those anymore. Crystal mics used to be very popular, and ceramic mics. Each has their own properties. The crystal mic was actually a very good microphone for recording high frequencies. The only problem with it was very sensitive to dampness. And I had one when I lived in Florida. It lasted about a year. Actually, I lived in Miami. It lasted about a year, and it just completely went out. The salt air just ruined that. The ceramic is on the same level as a crystal. These are mostly the kind of microphones you'll find with a home tape recorder. But again, they had pretty good high frequency responses. In the professional line, we're talking about the mic you're going to run into the most would be either a cardioid mic or a dynamic microphone, which actually has a magnetic moving coil. These are great because they don't tend to break up as much as other types of microphones. The other kind that you're seeing an awful lot with the wireless, and they are condenser mics, which like I'm wearing now. Condenser mics require some source of power, usually a battery, or you can have an amplifier or a mixer that will provide power to them. When you're dealing, though, with a wireless mic, it'll be the battery. So actually the battery in the transmitter is handling not only the transmitter, but it's actually providing power to the microphone. A condenser mic is actually a little capacitor inside there that's power is applied to it. And I'm not going to get into the technical end, but basically, if you're dealing with a condenser mic, you do need power. The one thing about the condenser mics is they can be very sensitive. And there's an old story about Otto Rubinstein playing the piano once, and they were picking up some noise, and they couldn't understand why, and they realized that he had his keys in his pocket. And the recording engineer was picking up the sound of the keys jingling in his pocket. That's how sensitive a condenser mic can be. All right, let's talk about types of or models of microphones. There are omnidirectional, which means these are non-directional. These record or pick up sound in every direction. Now, I'm going to try to give you an example of that by turning off the mic I'm now using. And this is number 2. All right, testing. All right, now, and if it doesn't show up well, I'm going to record it and then play it back. But you can tell I'm talking directly into the mic. But I can even talk to the side of the microphone, and I'm really not losing any sound quality, any loss of signal. These are fine if you want to record everything around the mic. Sometimes it's good for an interview. 2 people can be sharing the same mic and not have to be that far, you don't have to be that directional with them. The other thing I found is, and these little mics that I'm wearing, in fact, are also omnidirectional. I can pick up, by using these mics, pick up the questions that are asked in the audience with the same mic that's being used by the speaker, because if I turn the gain up, I can also hear that sound. All right, the other type is a directional mic. On this type of microphone, if I speak directly into it, it sounds fine, but if I talk on the side of it, you see how directional it can be, and you can actually see how directional it is by just trying to talk across the side. So a microphone like this, I'll tell you the difference in some of your usages. A mic like this is absolutely great for a podium mic where you know the person's going to be talking directly into it. If you're trying to place a mic just to be able to pick up the sound that is happening around it, like let's say you're doing a wedding, for example, you just need to place a mic because you know people are going to be standing somewhere in that area, then the omnidirectional would be a better one to use than non-directional, because they don't have to be directly on mic for them to be picked up. Now, when we get into the directional mics, there's also what's called a shotgun mic. Now, there's one. I guess that's actually a semi-shotgun mic that you've got there. This is one of the granddaddies of all directional microphones used in the motion picture industry. It's a Electro Voice 642. I'm not sure if it's still being made or not, but it's extremely directional. It's the grandson of the one, if anybody's old enough to remember the Kennedy press conferences, where they used to have this great long microphone sitting in the back of the room recording, or actually at the front of the room pointing at the audience. This is the one that came out of that. Electro Voice made that, and then this is the one that's one down from that. Let's see, I believe that's number 1, 2, 3, 4. Test? Okay. All right. Now, not only is the fact that this is directional, but because of the, there we go. Okay. Not only is it directional, but I can get back quite a ways. Ellen, why don't you hold this? It doesn't work too well with, all right, now, let's do it this way. I'm going to just record something here. Okay, I'm going to unplug the house system for a second. That was the reason why I was going to unplug the house system. Okay, now, and turn that up. The only mic I want on is this one. All right, directional mic. Point it. That's what I say it was. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. All right, now point it towards me. Here we go. Okay. If you're trying to record something at a distance, we're going to play this back so you'll see. With a directional mic, you want to be, why don't you come around this way, Ellen? Come out here. You want to be aimed at the speaker, but if you can't be that close to him, so you see I'm back here about, about 8, 10 feet away, and yet aim it down more at my mouth. There we go. Aim it up at my mouth. There we go. Just aim it directly like you're, there we go. All right, I'll aim it. Okay. No, don't move. Now you know why they put us on. This is the comedy relief to keep you awake after lunch.
I'd make a comic, but he turned off my mic.
The point I'm making now is I'm this far back. I'm going to play this back in a second. You're going to hear the sound. Now, okay, as a comparison, put that one down. Pick up the black one. Pick up the black one.
Yes.
Okay, now point that at me. I'll crank the gain up on that one. Now we're recording with the directional mic, but not a shotgun mic. Now let's play both of these back.
How about the uni?
Well, all right, we can do that. Okay, now we're recording with the omnidirectional and undirectional microphone, again, all at the same distance. Now let's see how they sound when we play it back. So for that,
Yeah, put the house in.
I know, we got to turn everything else off, rewind the tape. And that should come up on number 6.
Put the sound up.
It is. Okay. If you're trying to record something at a distance, we're going to play this back so you'll see. With a directional mic, you want to be, come around this way, huh? You want to be aimed at the speaker, but if you can't be that close to him, so you see I'm back here about, about 8, 10 feet away, and yet aim it downward in my mouth. There we go. Aim it up in my mouth. There we go.
You notice we still have the presence of the sound on mic.
Now you know why they put this on. This is the comedy relief to keep you awake after lunch.
I'd make a comment, but he turned off my mic.
The point I'm making now is I'm this far back. I'm going to play this back in a second. You're going to hear the sound. Now, okay, as a comparison, put that one down. This black one.
Yes.
Bring the gain up on that one. Now we're recording with the directional mic, but not a shotgun mic. Now let's play both of these back. Well, okay, now we're recording with the omnidirectional and unidirectional microphone again, all at the same distance. Now let's see how they.
Now, could you hear on the third mic how much of a loss of presence there was? The reason I mention that, a lot of people are used to recording with camera mics on the camera, and they feel this sound is sufficient, and yet that's actually the kind of quality we were getting with that mic. I wanted to start off by saying Fred's rule is, anytime anybody is speaking, they should be mic'd. So think of it this way, anytime you have anybody talking, make sure they're either wearing a mic or speaking into a mic. A mic on a camera is there for the ambient sound, nothing else. In a pinch, if you're standing maybe 2 feet away from somebody, use it if you have to, if you don't have anything else. But otherwise, you're trying to record a conference, you're doing an industrial video, just forget about the mic that came with the camera. I tend to take mine off. Pat, did you have a question? Or? No, okay. Okay. All right. Now, getting back to this.
Is your mic on?
No, it isn't. Thank you, honey. Okay. And number.
My mic on?
Yes.
No, now you're on. Okay. Whatever. All right. What I wanted to point out is the fact of presence. In other words, when you're off mic, you get that real hollow sound. So the thing you want to do is always make sure that your subject is close to a microphone. Now, dealing with wireless mics, which you'll probably end up using in a lot of industrial videos. The shotgun would be great to use, but it requires an extra sound person. So let's go with the idea of the wireless. Let's see, this top one is actually for the camera. This is the one that is the house system, right. Proper way of putting this on, I've seen so many times, I don't know why, people tend to put them on lapels. All right, that's fine if you're doing an interview, the person's sitting in a chair, and they're facing that direction, the direction that the microphone is placed. I turn my head this way, immediately I'm off microphone. I've always liked to place it, if you're wearing a tie, I've always liked to place it high on the tie, about where I'm wearing these two mics, dead center. This way, no matter which way I turn my head, I'm equal distance from that microphone at all times. Now, Ellen's a very good example, honey, step around this way, of someone who I would have a problem with this mic. Immediately, she's wearing a necklace. And as she moves around, can you hear that? That's bound to happen sometime during the shot. So the first thing I'll do if someone is wearing jewelry like this, I'll ask if they can take it off, or we can, do
like this.
or pull it back, as long as it doesn't fall forward, or pull it up. Right. Now, in a case like this, I think cosmetically, this is probably the only place we can put this, unless we bury the mic. I have pinched. If I'm not going to show it, if I'm going to be on a pretty tight shot like this, I've actually pinched the fabric here and placed the mic like so. And now it's exactly where I want it, and I might place it a little bit lower because I know my shot may always be like this. But again, it's for cosmetic purposes. If you have to, then you're compromising. At least this is further in than my lapel is. So women's clothing is always a problem. They button their shirts a button the wrong way.
Thank you.
Well,
Opposite of men. So
It's better.
the way around
Not
that,
wrong, it's right.
the way around that, if this were a woman's shirt, I'd have the buttons, the open flap would be on this side. So actually the way around it is simply place the mic, if you have to, place it inside. So we'll do it upside down. Place it like that, and it works just fine. Again, you're only going through one layer of clothing. Normally I bury mics anyway, so you're not going to lose anything going through clothing. There's not really any rustling because they're not going to be doing anything, any activity that's going to be causing it to rustle. So there's a one way of handling it. Of course, a lot of the mics come with the ends that come off, and you can turn them around. Some of them don't. I'm talking about the alligator clip now. I think you understand that. Okay, let's get into...
Fred, during weddings, the groom is wearing a white shirt, black tux, a bow tie, or sometimes a button.
Can I answer that one?
And we go
Okay, I am the groom. Ellen, wire me up.
You get her to pull his shirt out like so.
No, seriously.
No, I'm serious too, and I've had grooms do it for me. They don't.
She loves this job.
And then you put it underneath. Here, you hook it to the inside, underneath the, so that the ruffles are here, but you don't see it. And then he tucks it in, and he hides the wire in
And
underneath,
transmitter is usually
in the pocket, or
going,
behind.
I usually put the transmitter in here. Like this. The wire's over here. He's got a closed coat, jacket. Now this wire, you understand, is for the camera, so this wouldn't even be here. And you tuck him in, right? And there he is. And I remember we talked about this last year, and somebody said they had rustling of clothing. I have never had a problem with clothing rustling. Normally, at a wedding anyway, by the time the groom has come down and is standing there, they're not moving very much. Yes, if they're walking, maybe you might pick up a little. I haven't. But the whole thing is that once they're there, nobody's really moving around that much to cause any kind of a rustling. But
You want it back?
yeah, might as well. Now, what do you do about wiring up a woman? Well, so in fact, I had a bride once that said she wanted to be wired up, and I said, well, where am I going to put it on you? And we could have. I just didn't want to get into that. If we were...
You could put it.
Sorry about that, Steve. I didn't... What you
could
can
put it
do...
as a bra strap or
Yeah,
a
if
bra.
I wanted to wire Ellen up, what we would do is actually
Thread it
through,
and put it on the bra.
clip it on the bra. Now, you get in the only thing you have to watch out when you're burying a mic on a woman is nylon slips. I remember back in college, we had a newscaster that was wearing we got all this crackling sound, and I finally said, is she wearing a slip? And someone said, yes. I said, it's probably nylon. Just have her take it off. And, well, what the heck, Now you know why I like this part of the business, but that was actually the problem. So you've got to watch out what the undergarments may be. But again, clip it onto the bra, tape it on if need be. The duct tape comes in very handy.
Masking tape works good too.
Yeah.
Skin.
I don't think it's going to hold. And the other thing is we were going to try this. If you do pick up any kind of a noise problem, I didn't bring enough cotton with me, but you can always take the mic and wrap it, carry some cotton with you, wrap it in cotton, and then place it wherever you're going to be placing it. And usually,
We've done that on kneeling benches,
not the cotton, but the mic.
the mic, but you use cotton balls occasionally on the kneeling bench or on the priest's table,
Well, the point is you're trying to prevent something from actually hitting the mic and moving it. So in that
on
case,
stages for plays.
yeah. Now, let's see. What do you do about wind? Most microphones come with wind screens. The other thing in a pinch, I had this with Talent the other day. We were doing a shot outside, very, very heavy wind. I just put it under his tie. It didn't matter that I would have probably started that way to begin with, but I just simply let his tie act as a windbreaker, and that worked fine. If that hadn't worked, we would have put it under his shirt. Again, you can get about one layer down without losing too much. One of the things I wanted to bring out is the fact in multiple mics, and we're going to go back and record, our beautiful sound system again. Yeah, jing jing. All right, in multiple mics, let's say you're doing a meeting like now. We've got a panel. We've got 4 or 5 people sitting up here. Each one has a microphone. And what most of the hotels will do, if you walk in and you're plugging into a hotel system, you'll find out that they've turned up the gain on all the microphones. So what happens? Let me unplug the house system again. I'm going to turn up 2 of our mics and, oh, what the heck. We've got our mics on.
But our mics are off because we're on the house system.
Yeah, I know. Okay, now I'm going to do a comparison. I'm going to take this microphone. Oh, let me get this. Here we go. Go back to the beginning. Good. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to record this. Yep. Set a level, test, 1, 2, okay. All right, what I want to do is I'm going to record this with, let's say you have, like I say, all the mics are open, but only one person is speaking. All right, this is what the sound is like when all the other mics are opened up and yet only one person is talking. Now, if we do the same thing, and turn off all the other microphones, oh, there, I may have had feedback at the beginning. Let me do that. All right, let me do that one more time. I had the system turned on. That's the problem. Here we go. Okay, what I'm recording right now, and what we'll be hearing, is all mics are open, speaking into one microphone. Now, we're going to turn off all the other microphones, except the one I'm talking into, and we'll hear the difference of that. Yeah, I know. Left one mic up. Sorry about that. System turned on, that's the problem. Here we go. Okay, what I'm recording right now, and what we'll be hearing, is all mics are open, speaking into one microphone. Now, we're going to turn off all the other microphones, except the one I'm talking into, and we'll hear the difference of that. Could you hear it? Was there enough of a difference? Yes? Okay. Yeah, it's basically presence. What happens, you get cancellation, you have all kinds of problems when mics, you're right? Okay? What you're getting is all kinds of cancellations with the mics being in proximity to each other, so you're picking up this hollowness of sound. What I try to do is get the mics to come to my mixer, and then I turn off any mic that isn't being used. Same thing when I was doing weddings. We might have 5 or 6 mics hooked up. I made sure all of the mics were off except the ones that actually had people speaking into them. So when I had a podium mic up at the podium of a church or lectern, and that mic wasn't being used, it was turned off. On the other hand, when it was being used, I made sure all the other mics were turned off, and that way I got a very good presence sound. That was one of the things we were able to sell, was the quality of sound that we were getting, and that's one of the reasons for it.
Also, when you're having speakers lined up, you'll hear drinking of water, rustling of papers. That's why you have to turn off the mics, because you'll even hear them coughing, sneezing, and it disturbs the rest of the audience from the talk.
I once had a mic placed. I placed the mic on a table, and then the waiter put one of these water pitchers, brand new water pitcher, on the table right next to my mic, and the ice started to melt. Anytime I went to that mic, you heard this crackling sound. You know, it was just like a fire in the room. I think I ended up walking up and just moving the water pitcher.
You did too. Also, we've had mics thrown in the corner where people won't wear a microphone. We've had to run in and tell them, please use the microphone because we're recording you for the group. And most of the time you get them to listen, but a lot of times they don't. So you just try to put it on the podium and catch it that way.
Okay, we'll get into that, in fact, but let's talk about the cables you're going to use between your mics. Mics come in two ways.
Let me hit it right at that.
Okay. You're either talking about a high impedance or low impedance by balanced or unbalanced lines. A balanced line would be a cable like this, which has 2 hot wires and a ground. 2 leads, and a ground. Basically what it does is it keeps hum from entering the system by putting it out of phase. If anything were to be induced in this cable, it's going to be out of phase. It also allows you to run cables for a lot longer distance. The other, yeah, it's your system, Steve. It's that mic. The other type of cable is just a 2-conductor cable, which is, this is a Radio Shack cable. Now this is great for a length about this long. Anything longer, and you're going to start picking up all kinds of noise. The ideal thing would be to start going with XLR cable if you can. Now, I mentioned I was going to talk about how to plug into an existing amplifying system, or when you're going to record, let's say even a wedding or anytime, or a conference. You want to be able to get your sound off of the sound system that's already hooked up instead of hooking up your own mics. There are times when it might be better to go the other way, but if you can patch into the system, like example, Jerry is recording me with this microphone. But if he wanted to, I could have fed him a lead, although we've been playing with it, out of the mixer. So what you want to do is find out what kind of a mixer there is in the system. Most of them are going to have an end on the back that will be a female end for the XLR. So you need an XLR cable. But you'll also find there's probably a headset output or a 1/4 inch or an RCA high-level output. Again, find out what the output is. If it's high level, the chances are you can't go directly into your camera with that. You'll need some kind of an attenuator, and you can buy those from even a store like Radio Shack carries those little attenuators. The other way, what I've always done is I've always carried a mixer with me, and I take whatever signal I'm getting from the hotel system and plug it directly into my mixer, and then I can control it. I'll either plug it into the high impedance or low impedance input depending upon what it is, but I also can handle the gain, because quite often the gain that I'm getting may be either too low or even too hot for me to handle. So if I have my own mixer in the system, I'm getting around that problem. Like I said, most cameras will have a microphone input. So you never want to plug anything into that mic input of your camera other than a mic level unless you're dropping it down with an attenuator. Ellen, you brought up the idea of using a mic. Many times you want to back yourself up. If the hotel system goes down and you're recording a meeting or conference, you've got absolutely nothing. So what I'll do is I'll always, if there's a major speaker, I'll always put a mic on the podium or on the speaker himself and just have a backup. That way, in case the whole system goes, at least I've got the main speaker on a mic that's going directly to my camera. Many times you'll get hum in the room. The system itself is just a poor system. They've got an amplifier that hasn't been serviced in years, so you've got all this kind of noise going through it. So again, having your own mic in there means you can cut away from the mic, the signal that you're getting from the mixer in the room, and go to your own microphone. And then use the other for maybe a panel or something where you haven't mic'd everybody. You want to say something?
Yeah, what about 2 weeks ago, we were at a convention, old-time radio show. We were attending mainly, but he was videotaping some of the the things, and he put the mic, the mixer in the room had a buzz, so he put it on the speaker, put his mic on the speaker, and got great sound.
Well, in a pinch, what do? If all else fails, what happened?
What's the name?
Oh, well, you know who I am. If all else fails.
Do I? Who are you?
If all else fails, yes, you can look around. You can actually. I once wanted to record James Doohan giving an interview somewhere, and I couldn't get close enough to him. I positioned myself directly under one of the speakers, had this microphone with me, aimed it directly at the speaker, and got a pretty good recording. Again, we're talking about, in a pinch, if something fails, you need to at least get a recording.
Well, we were
But-
at a Greek church, and they wouldn't let us
Oh.
put mics up front.
Yeah, that's right. There was a case we
Put it
couldn't.
on the,
We actually had to record off the speaker. They wouldn't let me tie into their system. They wouldn't let me use mics up on the people or anywhere. So we had to go with that. You're right. Hum. I mentioned that earlier. Hum is a problem sometimes with sound. One of the things I found is that video and audio don't seem to want to mix. The first time I started picking up a lot of hum is when I started working with video. I don't know what it is about the systems. Maybe the fact that the cameras may be on a different ground system. I have no idea what it is. But quite often, everything will be fine, and you plug your camera into the sound system, and suddenly you get a hum, and it might actually go through the system itself. One of the ways you might try to get around it, if your camera, this usually doesn't happen if you're battery operated, but if your camera is on an AC power supply, you might try lifting the ground. What that is, and I'm sorry I didn't bring an example with me, but it has a plug on it. Okay. You, on most of your plugs that you're plugging in, one side is wider than the other. You can only plug it into an outlet one direction. So what you want to do is go to a hardware store and get these little devices that actually allow you to turn this plug around this way. What it does is it has a, they're meant to, I think, add grounds to where the, oh, we've got one, great.
Jerry.
Thank you, Jerry. Okay. In this case, I can plug this in, and let's say this is the only way this would have gone into to the outlet, and I can now turn this around and it'll go in the other way. This particular one, I know they're now making them so you can't do that. You actually may have to file down or cut down one of the leads so that it goes into the wall outlet. But what you're now doing is you're turning the, well, right away by using this, the way this is, we're lifting the ground. But sometimes by just turning it around, you actually can eliminate that hum. I carry one in my camera all the time because I found that by doing this on the power supply and just rotating it so it's plugged in the opposite way, it eliminates any of the hum that I've been getting. Oh, okay, let's get into conference. Let me ask you, anybody have any questions at this point about sound recording? Yes?
What about mixing balanced and unbalanced?
Oh, okay, and I just remembered we talked about something. I've got to repeat the question. Question is, what about mixing balanced and unbalanced? I'm doing that here right now. I've got two microphones that are balanced. The wireless mics are unbalanced. My tape deck was unbalanced. Most mixers will allow you to do that. They have an input. I have on the back of this mixer, if you can see here, we've got a row of XLR inputs. Across the top of that are quarter-inch jacks, which are unbalanced, and this mixer will take either. Some mixers have a switch that when you plug an unbalanced mic into it, you have to throw the switch. Does that answer your question, or do you have more?
But is there an effect on the
Oh.
sound quality? Like, I have access to balanced mics and cords, but of course your one-chip cameras don't have a balanced.
The advantage of using a balanced system over an unbalanced is that with a balanced line, you can run it a lot. Biggest advantage, you can run it a lot longer. You can run several hundred feet, maybe 1,000 feet, and not.
Pardon me,
Yeah.
Shore did a study on that years ago. They ran 5,280 feet, didn't have any loss before they gave up and said it's working fine.
Yeah. So that's the big difference. As far as the distance we're right at here using 25 or 50 feet of cable, I doubt if it's even measurable. Yeah.
I think partly what he's saying is you can get a balanced cable that gives you an unbalanced connector that goes into the camera.
Well, you can get cables like this. XLR on one end, which is balanced, going into a microphone. And at this end, there's only two wires that are actually soldered. Actually, there's only two connectors at this point. And so this is actually converting it down to a unbalanced system. And that'll work. And quality is the same. Yeah, the only time, yeah, the only thing is if you start noticing any hum, then you might try going to an all-balanced system. We were going to now talk about conference recording. Why don't do you want to define that, or do you want me to define that?
Either way.
All right, well,
You do, you've done it longer.
okay. We mentioned about another way of increasing your business. I guess about 1984, I discovered that there was a big business with conference recordings. I had been doing it earlier, didn't realize that. You're on.
Okay, go on.
Okay.
I'll interject when you-
You're going to interrupt me, I know that. Okay. I realized in 1984 there was a very large business of this. I had been doing it for some small groups years ago. We were asked, like for Berney to record things. We were asked for some Amway distributors. But around 1984, I came across another association, a number of other, actually we were founder of another association that was made up just of companies that were doing conference recording. Now what that is almost every association that's out there will have an annual meeting. And they have speakers like this that will either be training them about something or talking about some subjects that are of interest to them. Medical conventions, you name it, there are thousands. There's a book that's about that thick of associations. Well, they need those meetings recorded. Many of the attendees want to be able to take those tapes away with them, either audio. These are audio and video. It's now video has come into play on this. So we started taping conferences a number of years ago. In fact, we did one in Chicago it was a world conference for the prosthetic and orthotics people. They bought $20,000 worth of tapes. That bought me my MX-50, my KY-17. It bought a lot of equipment. But in fact, the first year we had done their conference, they did, I think it was 8,000 or 9,000 on site, wasn't it? 10,000 on site. So it can be a nice bit of change. You're there for maybe 2 or 3 days, and you just can make a number of good sales. Do you want to go into?
We were doing audio and video for the first time, but we only sold like 2 sets of audio tapes and all the video. The next time we only sold 2 videotapes, and the rest were, 2 audio tapes, I'm sorry, and the rest were all video. So we cut out doing the audio for them. But
for that particular group.
Right. But then their sales started dropping when the attendees started dropping.
No, stand up for it.
I want to get something.
Okay.
I made a little bit of notes too so I could remember what I wanted to say. With conference recordings in your own hometowns, there are associations, there are companies that are going all around the country following. My son works for one. He did a conference for the World Bank.
World Bank.
And they did it all video on Bandcamp, and we're doing the dubbing. So that really worked out nice. But their people are not trained on video. You are. You have the equipment. You could come in and show them quality videos. When Fred had to put on opening tags, which they did not do, put tapes together because they gave them 2 tapes. They changed tapes in the middle of the talk. Didn't need to, but they changed it. These people do not know how to run conferences. And you know how to videotape. So you have a very good audience for quality. And you can get your leads through the hotels. You go to the convention services and talk to them, give them your demos, and tell them any associations they call and ask for video or audio, you can supply it. If you don't want to do the audio decks and sell them on site, you could take a video and dump them off on the audio and sell them, duplicate them at your office. You can also, if you have convention centers in your cities, look to them. Or if you have large associations in your own town, the phone book has their numbers. Call them, talk to the conference managers. They'd be willing to listen to you, get better sound, better videos. Those are some of the ways to get the conferences. And once you get your list, you call them and talk to people. But you need to, when you're talking to the client, you need to find out some important facts so that you can figure out how to charge. Because that's always something that people will ask. How are you charged for this service? And you also have to pay a commission to the association usually. And we do that deducting it from the tape sales. But you need to know how many are attending so that if there is a large amount, like the World Bank had, well, I don't know how many people attending. They were huge, all over the country. We have more PALs and CCAM tapes to make than you can name. In fact, we were doing that before we got here. But I'm sure they didn't charge them for the videotaping because they're making it up on the same.
They did. Oh, yes. That was a big account. I wish I could have gotten involved in that at the beginning. All right. What Ellen's saying is that I'm sorry, honey, did you have?
Go on. You can take over.
Okay. If anybody wants it, I didn't bring it, but email me or write to me or call me or whatever, and I can send you the address where you can order a book. I think it's about $40 or $50. Again, it's about that thick. It's a book of associations. It lists every association in the country. I would suggest you start with the associations that are meeting in your city. So find out, like Ellen said, go to the conference center if there is one in your city, go to your hotels, talk to the coordinators, and find out what conferences are coming into town. The odds are you're going to be able to maybe pick up something locally, even if a company that's doing it nationally, maybe it happens to be a small conference, that the company that's doing it on a national level didn't want to handle this particular conference. I know we were in that situation where we would only do some national conferences, some big conferences for a company or association. When they were holding a small meeting somewhere, it didn't pay for us to travel there, so they would pick up someone locally to record it. So that's something you might want to look into. What you normally do is establish a price for the tapes. You might find out what they've been charging the year before. A standard...
How many they sold. That
Right.
was one of
A standard has been somewhere about $35 for a tape. That's a videotape. Audio tapes go for anywhere from $8, $10, $12. It all depends on...
Some are up to 14.
Could be. Medical conventions tend to be a little bit more. Certain groups buy tapes, other groups we found didn't. Nurses don't have money to spend, doctors do. So it's...
Especially psychologists, it's psychiatrists.
Oh, yeah, remind me, I got to get back to those people. But, the other thing is, find out what their track record has been if they have one. How many did they sell last year? How many people are attending? You may want to, a lot of people are giving away the video. They're not charging for the service, and they're just making it on the sale of the tapes. We've done that for the audio tapes. We've tried not to do it for video, only because I want to be able to cover my cost a little bit. I just don't want to give away everything.
Well, we charge something like $200 a day for the room, per camera, per room.
Which is really nothing.
That was one of the other things I was going to say. Find out how many concurrent sessions you have. That's so important. Because if you've got 10 sessions going on at the same time, and you have to videotape all of them, you have to put a charge in because you've got to cover all those people.
You've got rental of equipment possibly, and of course personnel. So what I always try to do is at least get enough money that I can then pay somebody to be in that room with a camera. So I may pay someone, $150 a day to record it if I'm getting $200 from the association.
Also, there's lighting on, that's a whole other talk on how to videotape a conference.
Yeah.
But also, I know he has on there the sales desk and order forms. The sales desk, I did send him a list of how to run it. But basically, you have to keep track of everything. And you need an order form, clear. You can always make your own and do it.
Pass it around.
Okay, yeah, we'll pass it around. I have two different ones. This is video, this is audio. The best thing I have found is to try to put the client's logo in the upper right-hand corner, because that associates you with the client. Even though you're hired by them, it still associates you. This one shows their topic for their title for the year. And then again, I repeat it. And I do it this way. Fred taught me. I used to do this as paste up when I first started working with them. Now I've learned how to work PageMaker, Photoshop, you name it. But you can do it as a paste up if you don't have a computer. We started out typing it in the typewriter. I cut out their logo. Where do I have a buzz, Fred? Do I have a buzz? I have a buzz. And my necklace is in the bag. Anyway, hear the buzz?
Go.
I heard it. Anyway, I'll pass the two of them around. Then we also did conferences where the client would send us the tapes. They had it taped on site. They didn't want to pay for us to go out there. We do charge a traveling fee. Well, actually not a traveling fee, but with some of the conferences that we did, we'd have a room for two.
Oh, okay. Let me get into that.
Well, let me pass these around.
Go ahead.
So people can see. If this one just shows what their tapes will show, and we sold it as a complete set. That makes it kind of nice. And I keep a bunch of these type blank order forms. This is an audio set from from one of our old-time radio shows, and that'll show you different ways of seeing it. And I'll pass it around so everybody can see, because I keep these in the computer, but you don't need to. That's the biggest thing.
Let me see a raise of hands. How many people do not have a computer?
On this side, and one of each on this side.
Steve, are you seeing the raise of hands back there? I think.
Video.
Huh?
For office or video?
Office. Just how many do not have a computer at all? At all. Okay, we were talking about this earlier. Thank you. So everybody else then has a computer. Okay, how many people are not using a computer in their video production of any way, whether it be in other words, don't use their computer for video? Okay, a little more. All right, I think the majority of people today realize the video and computer industry have kind of merged, and we're kind of using it both ways. If anybody is still typing in lists of names, they don't have to. If you have a computer and somebody gives you a list of names, like you're doing a wedding and you want to list all of the bridesmaids and all the people involved with the wedding, scan it, and bring it into your computer that way. We don't type anything anymore.
And
Client
especially me.
Client tells me they want to bring in some copy to be included in their video. I tell them to give it to me on a disk. I don't want to make a mistake copying something, typing something. So there's no reason to type anything anymore. It can all be done, have the client do it or scan it. Now we were talking about the details on the association. Yeah, normally with an association, when we do a meeting, we will ask for a room at the hotel that they're staying at, and sometimes a guarantee of a certain amount of sales.
Right.
If they don't meet that number of sales, they actually will pay us the difference between the sales that are made and the figure we've set. And on the other hand, then we will also say that after X number of dollars, we will pay a commission to you. On video, it's been running about $5 a tape. On audio, it's been running about 30%. It's works out about the same both ways, I think. And again, that varies. Sometimes I've heard of groups having to give away 50% just to get the account. It can be a pretty competitive business. It's because there are a lot of people out there. There are really a handful of good companies out there that are doing this. Major companies that are actually recording conferences. There are a lot of small organizations out there that might be doing 1 or 2 conferences a year. Maybe they're doing a particular conference all the time. But as far as how many organizations actually exist, I think we took a number. There was somewhere between 50 and maybe 90 companies out there throughout the entire United States that are doing this. They're getting the bulk of the business. Some of them are getting some pretty good grosses. I've talked to a number of the guys, and they tell me they're grossing well over $1 million just doing conference recording, nothing else. So it can be a very appealing part of your business. It can also take up a lot of travel time. So if you're looking to get into it, you may consider the fact that you're going to be doing a lot of traveling with it.
And that's one of the reasons we're down to 2 conferences, because we're doing more on special interest videos, on infomercials, commercials.
Well, we're basically moving back into the production area, which is where I started. All right, let me just ask at this point, because we're probably down to about 10 minutes. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
On our videos that we do sell, I try to dress them up on the covers. I didn't bring one with me for the conference, but I would put their logo up here, put the title, the number of the tape, and the title of the conference, and repeat it on here, and I put the speakers. And usually I scan that in from their program and put their topics and their speakers list here. If you don't, you type it in. Your word processing, I use WordPerfect and I use PageMaker. But you can do any kind of word processor, WordStar, Word, any one of them. We'll do all that. We'll put the logo in and do it here, and you do it in black and white. You do it in one sheet, print it out, and do it on the copier. Face label is the same thing. You put just the title of the conference, the talk. You don't put the speakers' names. That's only on the front. And it just makes it nice.
Again, packaging, as you...
Oh, ours is down here, but we usually put it on the back. I put it on the back, duplicate it, record it and duplicate it by. This happens to be the only one I had with me. It's this video that he just...
And I think also, don't you sometimes put our name at the bottom?
Yeah, in here, yes.
Right there, we usually put our name and logo on the tape itself.
Black and white. You don't have to waste color for this.
But you package something nice like this, and someone walks away from a conference with a tape in a case like this versus a tape in a sleeve, and it
that's
just...
how most of them supply them in sleeves, so this puts us up one.
it gives us, again, a little extra selling point. All right, anybody have any questions about anything we've covered? Sound, any problems you're having? Yes?
How about controlling wind noise outside with a, say, a shotgun mic?
Okay, shotgun mic, again, the condenser mics are the worst to go outside because they're very, very sensitive. They make a very big shield for the Sennheiser makes a very good condenser shotgun microphone, and the windshield for it is about yay big. I mean, the mic itself is about...
That, right?
I didn't have a Sennheiser,
Oh,
but I used to have one for this. It was one of those, a windshield for it. And this, like I say, this I bought back in the 60s. It actually disintegrated. I'm going to have to write Electrovoice and see if I can get them to send me one.
There's a lot of equipment.
It fit directly over this and did an excellent job of cutting out wind. I think you'll find your dynamic mics work better outside than a condenser mic. Like I said, they're just not as sensitive to wind. But what you want to do is if you buy a shotgun mic, get the windscreen that comes with it and use that. Does that help you, John? Okay.
In a pinch, you can use a 3/4 inch bulb and the old reliable duct tape. Just put it around the end and they'll actually windshield.
Yeah.
Want to repeat it for him?
Okay, what was said was in a pinch you can use foam and put it on there with duct tape, and that'll work. In fact, that's really all that this was foam. It was a foam cover, and it just, like I say, disintegrated over the years. I opened up the case one day and found particles. Yes? The foam? Well, you'd want something that would at least allow sound to transmit but block the winds. I mean, you're looking for something that's not a perfect shield, not a sound shield as much as it breaks it up so that you're no longer getting this heavy wind hitting it. It's now absorbing a lot of that. But I think it still has a lot of transmission of, it still transmits something. Whatever. I don't know exactly, right, but what I'm saying is it, you don't want something to block it completely.
There's a couple different kinds of foam. There's a real dense foam, which I think maybe you're referring to, which nothing passes through. But most fabric stores have, it's a real spongy foam.
Yeah.
Okay? And sound passes through just fine. It's the same material that windscreens are made of.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a spongy light foam, right? Yes. Anybody else? See anything else we need to cover?
What?
Anything else we wanted to cover?
No, I think we covered everything,
All righty.
except to say, well, we're early. Did I say
Right.
goodnight?
Yeah.
One thing when you were tapping into sound systems,
Yes.
I use a wireless, a guitar wireless, made by Berney, and there's a bunch of other ones, that I will use to plug in the monitor out or the headphone out, and then have the receiver back at, by the camera, just run out of that right into my camera. And that way it's wireless, I get a very large,
Right.
We did football games where I was on one side of the field with the camera, way over on the other side were my announcers, and that's how we tapped in.
Good point. In fact, Nady sells what they call a guitar transmitter, and it has a 1/4-inch jack on the end, and it was designed strictly for guitar amplifiers. And I said, would that work on the output of any amp? They said, we don't know. Why don't you take one and try it? So we did, and it works. We've got 5 of them, and I had suggested that. Thanks for bringing it up, Dwayne, because I had completely forgotten about that. We use them so often. But it separates you from the system, so it eliminates a lot of the hum problems. In fact, quite often when I have a problem where I'm picking up hum going into the camera, I just go wireless on the transmitter, transmit the signal out of the mixer.
And that's great for rooms. Sometimes when you're in a room and you don't want to have wires, you can put it on their mixer and put it to your camera, have a...
Nady makes some very good equipment. They may not be as high priced as some of the other, but they're very dependable. And we found that they seem to travel a pretty good distance. I've actually been able to set up outside of a hotel room, outside of a ballroom like this, been out in the outer room recording audio, had 5 microphones all around the hotel within this general hallway, and pulled them all from being outside the room.
And what about the time in Buffalo when the speaker decided to take the group outside? The microphone went with them. He was wearing it, and we got a recording as he went out. Remember that?
Yeah, I said, where did he go? And he said, he's outside somewhere.
And also when they changed rooms on you.
Yeah, that was another time. So wireless can save you in many cases. Yes.
Brad, just wanted to mention that the new UHF mics in the 900 megahertz are much less interference than some of the VHF and certainly the FM wireless.
Yeah.
These are wonderful. There's nothing else on the frequency in North America other than these wireless. So you think that they're virtually interference-free from other transmission sources.
I read somewhere, and I don't remember whether it was UHF or VHF, they're talking about taking away one of those channels from the public and giving it to somebody else, so I'm not sure what. There was a big discussion about all the wireless mics that are out there. I think it's probably the maybe it's the UHF channels they're talking about doing. The FCC is playing around with frequencies again, so I would say watch it carefully and make sure you don't buy something that might be antiquated or just obsolete because of the FCC. But yeah, they're like I say, if you get into the VHF or your UHF band, you're going to get a pretty good mic up there. Okay, Bob. All right. Well, I'd like to thank all of you. Thanks.
Thank you. You want to do that?
10-minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about legal videography.